And without any further ado, I would like to invite our first speaker, and that's Marc Odinius. Who else could we invite to give a view on what's happening on the current market and to see how channel mix has changed? Marc, you're in, I see.
Yes, I'm there. Thanks.
Perfectly.
Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks a lot again for your support, and I will give you the word. All our expert speakers have 25 minutes, and if I come back on the screen, that means you still have got 5 left. So then you know that you or have to speed up or have to slow down depending where you are. But we'll open it off, of course, for questions, because people, if you really want to make it your event, post questions throughout, and I will see where we can handle them. So, Marc, all yours.
Thanks very much, Johan.
Okay.
Well, it's a great pleasure to be here again to share some data on the current situation of the market, as Johan already pointed out. I will try, as always, to put quite a lot of information towards you with a lot of charts. Still, don't follow the charts in so much detail. I will guide you through it, and hopefully we get some insights which the next speakers can also pick up on, because I'm very interested to hear how they actually see the market from the other side, sometimes like Michael, to see where he has problems. So time is limited, Johan said, and I'm always trying to squeeze it to the limit. So I would like to start now. So if you can all see my screen, we have this highlight, this headline: have the sales channels changed drastically? But Johan said, no, not just the sales channels. It's also about make and model mix. It's about the uptake of the fuel type. So how far are we? Is there a limit to that now in light of the crisis or not? Is it country specific or not? Is it general? And are changes temporary or permanent? Like with the first poll here, do we think that's going to go away again? That's what I'm going to touch on. And I think we can just start straight out. In light of the crisis, so that's the background. We have a big crisis going on. Is that really so? What crisis? Because if I see the media at the moment, and I track that a little bit, Stellantis net profits nearly tripled. Toyota beats on Q2 earnings, and profit view will be better. Renault Group is exceeding their targets in 21, and the strategy is working better than expected. Ford posts 17.9 billion in full year net income. Tesla, best year ever, closes 21 on a high note by besting expectations in Q4. Volvo, all-time high revenue, profitability, wow, through the roof. And last but not least, Volkswagen, sales down, but profits up. And I think that's this thing, supply not there, but still they're making a lot of money. So, and why does that happen? So what's the reason behind that? Because the crisis is truly here. So we have COVID. Okay, it's Omicron now, but we still have it, and it's still running pretty harsh. And lots of people have it right now, and see that that also all the companies are influenced because the staff is at home. Chip shortage, it will continue on until the end of the year for sure. Everybody's, I think, in agreement about that. High inflation, now the highest inflation we had for decades. That means rocketing price levels. That means we are facing a recession. Then we have the war in the Ukraine nobody expected to have. And with that, we have another refugee crisis. So crisis everywhere, but remember the previous slide, the OEMs are not doing so badly. And then we have the China lockdown, because China treats Omicron like Delta and closes down the whole country, and again produces more problems in the supply. Now, and if we think back, where did all this started, this change in the industry? It was the environmental crisis. So we had the targets, which we were not going to meet, the 95 grams in Europe. We had the Dieselgate, and that was the turning point where everybody started to move. Not the crisis we are facing now, because that came afterwards. But now we are in a totally different game. And why can multiple crises have a positive effect on the OEMs? And I think, usually you say good managers change because they're innovative, they foresee the future, they're great visionaries, and then they change, not because they're forced to. But if we're honest to ourselves, in a lot of things, we change if change is unavoidable. We change, then we change, and we even can change then, or we are changed by the surrounding factors, even though we could have done or should have done long before. And I think that helps. This is not a plan of the OEMs to perform better, because they had to now. I mean, the shortage of supply and that the prices are now going up, that's nothing that they did purposely. So, but let's look at the different things what change. So we have the availability that's gone down. So shortage of supply. We have the prices going up. We have the short-term registrations. So the demos, the kilometer zero, maybe even rent-a-car a little bit in that game going down. We have subsidies to fuel the market, the EV market especially, going up. We have a mix in the models, which is different to before, and the change is accelerating, which I will show in a second. Then we have the demand, which is still pretty strong and can't be fulfilled, which again means rebates are not the thing I have to do right now. And then we have all the change around in the fuel type, which we need to do, or which we're doing right now, which has been rocketing for the last 2 years. And let's see what that means. But all that together helps to put out those messages for the OEMs I showed at the beginning. And now let's just dig into one or two things. Now, this chart is crowded, I know. MM5 on the right means this is the aggregation of the other 5 slides, the charts you see. So this is the major markets in Europe. What do you see? You see line charts of the market segments. Orange private, you have a legend on the right. True fleet's blue, demo is green, rent-a-car is red. And what do I want to show here? We're always talking about tacticals don't need to be done anymore in that sense. And if you look at it, just look at the green line. Nearly everywhere the green line goes down. I purposely cut this thing with 2021 to have a full year, and we will look in a minute what it does with 2022. But you see MM5, we have serious reduction. But you also see in MM5 that rent-a-cars already regaining. So they are craving even for cars to get more, and they're bouncing back. Maybe not as far as they were, because business travels is down and will stay down because we all are in home office now and we won't travel. Look at this meeting. We do this at the moment remotely, and we have a lot of that going on. Now look at the other countries, Germany going down, UK going down. France is a bit different. Look at the demo in France. It's stable. And also in Spain, stable, even rising if we move further on. That means, yes, we're going down, but we're not halving this number. So it's a few percent points we're going down. And I believe, and that might be a bit controversial, that that's not going to stay. Ideally, of course, the OEM would like it to stay that way because they're making more money if they don't actually have excess baggage sitting around at the dealerships. And with their changing business models, it might work out in the future. But reality hits us. And if all is changed around from ICE to BEVs and PEVs, I also think that these few percentages we are losing at the moment will bounce back at least to some degree. Let's discuss that maybe later with others. Now, going to 2022, you also see it's accelerating. In the UK, it's really going down. So they're really not doing tacticals. In MM5 overall, it's stronger. But you also see in Spain, for example, that the dealer levels, the demos are rising. And Spain also, it's not really going further down. And the level is at around 17, 18%. So that's the first thing. So we have fewer numbers on the tacticals. Okay, next thing, model mix. What's happening there? Now, let's look at 3 agglomerations. We have Euro 16 countries. So that's about 90-95% of the whole European market in terms of figures. And what do I see? I see blue passenger cars. I see the orange or yellow SUVs and MPVs. And what do I see? I see that SUVs, as I think said 6 years ago already in presentations on Fleet Europe, that SUV is the norm. And now you can see it here that the SUV in the total market is the top segment. And that means it's not the PC market anymore, it's an SUV market where we have a segment PC. So that's a different story now. The same holds true for Austria, just diving deep in one country, just to see if it's different there. It's even a bit stronger there. And if we look at Germany, Austria, and Switzerland together, that's the only part, due to the German preferences of makes and models, that we are still not quite there. Now, but still, why is that rocketing again? Why is SUV so strong? Now, of course, we've been preaching SUVs going up over the past 10 years and gaining and gaining and gaining. Of course, the OEMs put models in the segments which are running really, really good. So if I would have the choice, if I put an EV in an SUV segment, I would do that. I would not put an MPV out. I would not put a compact car out if I have the choice and the power to put out an SUV, because SUV is the segment which is sold best. So we have an acceleration now because all the EVs and PHEVs are also now SUVs. And now if we just put a filter on this chart here with PHEVs and EVs, bam, you see that we have this butterfly effect. EU 16 much stronger, Austria much stronger, and even now in the German region, Austria, Switzerland, and Germany, we have SUV rocketing. And SUVs, I would say a compact SUV is a bit more expensive than a compact car. So there we have another reason why they're doing so good at the moment. Okay, that's just a very tiny portion of the model mix, but I think it drives home the point where people try to get the supply done, the limited supply we have. And now let's look at the evolution of the fuel type, because at the end of 2021, we saw the levels shrinking. And so, I had a few discussions with people. Oh, is that now the limit? Are we going down or are we going backwards a little bit? And will that slow down what we've achieved so far? And let's have a look at that. So you might know this. This is our Road to Zero dashboard, which holds all CO2 emissions and all the alternative powertrain for the whole of Europe, country-wise, monthly-wise, year-to-date-wise. And what we see here, I scrolled back to December. See up the top, I just highlighted that with green. December 2021, to see how high we were. And if you look at the line chart at the bottom, just at the green line, you see that the green line was above diesel at that point in time, just notching 20% already. And overall, in December, we had 39% alternative powertrain already, which was absolutely amazing. That nobody thought that it would go so high so fast. But what happened then? Let's propel ourselves forward to now. Now, in terms of figures, March figures are in for most countries. So we can see now what happens in the first few months. And what usually happens is that we have a dip after the year end, because usually the year end is a rally. You want to get your numbers on the road. But in this sense, you also want to see that taxation changes, which take effect on January usually, you still are eligible for the car. So you might have to register in December, which is the case, for example, in the Netherlands very often. And you can see that here is a peak, but a year before there's a peak as well. So this is not something unusual and say, oh, now we're dying down with alternative powertrain. No, we're going down. And if you see the next 3 months, January, February, March, the next 3 columns, which I added to this chart, line chart at the bottom, you see that the pickup is already stronger than the year before. Because if you now just move your view up to the pie chart, you see we are back at 32% already. We were in 1 month already at 39 before, and we are plus 9% already. And why are we plus 9% when we dive down so much? Because now we are comparing to the previous year, and up to March the previous year, we are already gaining near to 10%. So that's already one factor why it's going stronger. Another factor is that the models, we're getting a lot of models, and that's not stopping either. So I just compared here the number of models which made 5,000 registrations per year in the European market. So in 17, we had 8. In 19, we had 13. In 20, it was 31, and that was the first real push. And in 21, we had 40 models, 40 individual models, which had more than 5,000 registrations. EVs, pure EVs, which is quite astounding. And we are still at the beginning, or let's say at the building phase. So usually a market holds 300 to 500 models, and big models, 50 to 80, sometimes 100. Now, if we just aggregate that now to manufacturers, you can see the same kind of thing. That means in 17, it was just 1 or 2 players who actually had a few EVs out there, mainly Renault at that time, and Tesla was just starting. In 19 was the first step where you could see there was a bigger number, and Tesla actually took that as an innovator. And then in 20, COVID time, we saw Volkswagen gaining ground due to their change of policy. And now in 2021, see how many different players out there. See to the right, this is everybody nearly has something to offer at the moment, and they're not by far with their model range finished, I would say. And you see that the level is now up to over 1 million cars in Europe. So this is something where I would say, yeah, okay, we're going to continue. It's not going to die down. We are progressing, and we will see more levels, rising levels of alternative powertrain. And now, last, the ICA fade-out announcements of the OEMs, and we just tracked that over the time. When do they say, will I only produce zero-emission models? And by 2035, all those guys are out of the ICE and have zero-emission models only. And if we transform that with their current market share, because then there are no ICE models anymore, and put an algorithm to that, then in 2030, we're already over 50% zero emission. And in 35, we will be at over 70%, near to 3/4. So that's that's a conservative thing we're talking about, because there are just these players. There are far more players on the market. So that's something where I say, okay, this development is not going to stop. It's not going to go backwards. It's going to go forwards. Now let's see country specifics. I showed you Austria before, and I want to do that again. Now this is Europe. Just remind you, this is March Europe. The uptake was 32%. And now if we go to Austria, it's slightly less. It's 24%. If you look 32 pie chart, 24 pie chart. And the uptake, the growth is 5%, and in Europe overall is 9%. Okay. What is important now, look to the lower right to the stacked bars. If you look to true fleet, they are already 17% EVs, pure EVs, which is one of the highest shares we find in Europe. So Austria is going very strong on the fleet market. And even in the RAC, they have 12%, which is usually, I just go back once, look at the RAC, 5% is the European average, 5% pure EVs. In Austria, it's 12. So they do it differently. And now let's drill deeper. So now we look at Austria, and we see Austria going backwards 3% last year. And in the overall market, that was just December 21, we see that only one model, Tesla Model 3, is the only model, EV model, in the market in the top 10. So that seems, not such a big uptake then. Wait. So if we apply another filter, go backwards, this is the total market. And if you look now to the bottom left, you see that the true fleets thing is turning blue. It means we are now filtering on true fleets. And what happens? Out of the top 10 models, 4 are already pure EVs. So Austria is doing it differently to the general European market, because it's pushing a lot of cars through the fleet channel. And in Austria, the fleet channel is 46%, so a very big share of the market, so half-half. But if I would now just even zoom in on electric, it would be even 70% of the EVs go through fleet, which is very unusual. So Europe is similar, but not the same. Now, 2 other things before I'm done. Why are the countries different, and why is the uptake then maybe different? We just are conducting an e-mobility survey on the big markets in Europe. So we are trying to look at the company car driver, at the private individual, and the company, the fleet manager, and what their views is on e-mobility. And here you can see it straight off. Environmental reasons, top left, goes for everybody. But the Germans are special, for example, in these things. Well, we're special, great. Not so nice, actually. They go for image first, 77%, and costs are not a lot of their concern. If you look at the bottom left, 29%. French people, totally different. French fleet managers say 76%. My major concern is the cost. And image is the lowest, which if we measure it cross-European. So this is one thing, what is important to switch to e-mobility. And another thing, if you look at the Germans again, what barriers do they see? So it's typical. We are so anxious in Germany. Who is the range? Range is the biggest, the highest share of all European fleet managers we asked, 83%. So for Germans, it means give me a long range, give me a short charging time, cost, I don't care. So that's why you probably see quite a lot of high value cars in Germany, EVs, running, because people are actually more anxious about going 500 kilometers than having to pay a bit more for the vehicle. So therefore, Europe is similar but not the same. And this survey goes far deeper, but I think that just drives home the point, and that we have different people doing different things, but in general we have policies which drive us all towards alternative powertrain. Now, just one last thing. Are changes temporary or permanent? And when I looked at the agenda of this expert track, and I saw Michael Pohl going to talk about the problem of supply for fleets, that was something where I just took screenshots from our system. So please, it's not very nice, but I think the thing in here, try to follow me, please, because this is really important. At the top little screenshot out of our cube system shows the private and true fleet share in the major 5 markets. That means in 2017, fleet had a share of 24%, and that rose. So we all know that fleet is rising. Now around 30% in 2021. 22, let's see how it goes, but even higher in 2022. That means the fleet share of the total market was 29%. And private market around 45 all the time, and a bit higher in 2022. Now, remember at the beginning, I put a filter on the model mix of EVs and PHEVs. If I do the same here, it's the same view, and I just put the filter on everything and say, just look at the EVs and PHEVs. And now look what happens. And I think that goes into the direction of Michael. I don't know his part yet, but if you look at it, you think at first, oh, great, fleet goes up to 40%. In the general market, they only have 31. Great. But look what happens. In 18, it was 43. In 19, it was 44. Then in 20, it's 40, 40, 40. And what happens with the private market? It starts with 34, and then it goes to 32% share of EVs. So 32% of all EVs and PHEVs go through the private market. That's what it means. 33%, 36% in 21, 39% in 2021, and 41% in 2022. And in 2022, so far, is fleet still the driver for the EV? Or do now more cars go through the private channel? And will that continue? And I think that's an important part to take into account. That things are changing and we have to monitor it, like the short supply and the demos. Will they come back or not? Or here, now, will we have problems in fleets if we want to electrify them because we don't get the cars, because OEMs rather sell to low-margin private individuals? That was it. That was the first introduction of figures, how we are at the moment. You know us, we do lots of dashboards. And now the new thing, that's why I showed you Austria as well. We're not just going broad on countries, but we're drilling in the country down to postcode level to understand the mechanics if the rural area or the urban area has a different view. Thanks very much, guys. Have fun today.
Great stuff, Marc. Thanks. Just maybe a question from my side, and sorry, I can't hear. Okay, sorry. No, I was looking at the screen. I'm sorry, Marc. No, just a question from my side, maybe. What is quite striking to me is that when everyone is crying for cars, whenever we come with in a countries, importers and SCs, everyone's crying for cars. It seems that fleet customers also crying for cars. And then it looks to me strange that this dealer demo type isn't really drastically declined. I don't know, in the discussions you've had or in the talks you have with OEMs, is do you have a feeling why is or is it really specific per our country, and are there reasons why in country they still maybe have to push in a certain segment or fuel type? I don't know.
Yeah. To be honest, I was surprised too, because my general feeling was there's nothing there, so nothing. But you know what I mean? So it's not just a few percent. But I mean, we are looking at 16 countries and it is not even halved. So there is still quite a supply. And what we saw, for example, this rise at the end of December, it's not gone. So people still use that. And of course, often it's also fleets who want to supply their own staff then with the favorable taxing scheme.
Yeah.
But it's also the manufacturer who has to fulfill targets, who still pushes a little bit. Maybe that dies down even in 2022, even less, because we have even more shortage. But that's what I said at the beginning. This might not be purposeful. This might be because they can't do it otherwise at the moment. They're forced not to supply anything to their dealers because everything is gone anyway. And I think, therefore, I was surprised at the levels. I don't have an answer for you, except for that what I suggested now. And therefore, I really think if chips are there, if full production capacity is there, I think we will see those levels rising a little bit because they're not so far off.
Yeah. No, it's also and probably that's something where I would like to get back to in the panel as well. People are very professionally sourcing. They can still find cars. So I think there is an imbalance sometimes in some countries where there's a bit of oversupply of something that is not really selling well. And therefore, I think there's still a bit of push in this dealer demo. There's a question from Marcel that whether you've got a view that the increase of share in retail customers in EVs might stagnate now a bit due to infrastructure. Well, I just personally have my EV 2 weeks, so I start to explore how this works and how you have to look where you go and what you basically do. So I can understand that it requires a bit of work, although that I don't think it's complicated. But what's your view on this, on private customers?
Yeah, I think that's really pointing to the last chart. And I think that will rise still. I think we are not in such an oversupply at the moment already that we say, okay, we rather push it there or there. So I think the interest to take it and the people who can actually use the car with a charging station at home and get through the day, there are still lots of people out there who can do that. And if the OEM has the choice, he might choose to take that path more than the other path. But of course, there will come a time when we have a charging infrastructure. Hopefully, I mean, we see that in the survey also, charging infrastructure is one of the biggest hurdles in the office from people to make it happen in companies. So that's need to be tackled. And then I think the companies will have a greater push as well again. But at the moment, I really see that the retail customers will be favored a little bit as long as they can take the car.
Just to share as well for you, we've got the results of the first poll where actually half is saying that it will come back, at least in 2
or in 5 years, and half say that it will only slightly improve or that it will stay as it is. Actually, 26% says that it will stay as it is, and that is probably the a topic for elements that we have afterwards as well. I know that you track used car as well. Any view from your side there, Marc? What's your feeling? Of course, it's not
Yeah.
something that you study every day, but as an expert, it's interesting to have your view.
I have a feeling today I'm a bit more provocative than I'm usually I usually am, because I
Good.
really think it's going to bounce back.
Okay.
Again, it will be, like I said, SUV is normal now. I think the normal BEVs, PEVs, but more BEVs will be normal, and then you will have supply. It's not like, oh, it's going to be a shortage forever. Of course, we have to look at the park. There's lots to do until the park really has the supply it needs to turn it around. But I think we will see over time that we overcome this shortage. It won't, and I don't think it will take 5 years.
Yeah. Another question is how much of the mix or the change from private into fleet can be due to changes of ownership, not really changes in use. So there are short-term rental companies who start to register cars on lease or on fleet, or for example, a private that's go to private lease. I think in the Dutch market, it's now 40% or something of
Yes.
private customers going to private lease. Is that the main shift, you think?
It's one of the really big things. I think before, but even before the crisis, I said in a certain time we will have just one big fleet, because we have providers like Uber or Auto Abos or Leaseplan, to operate our fleet for everybody, and then it will be registered, but on the lease and therefore commercially, and then it will all be fleet. If you take a black and white, and I think exactly that is happening now with lots of Auto Abo schemes, that you see the cars in fleet and you don't see them registered on the private individual, and therefore still the fleet numbers can rise. And we also see that the only thing that goes against that is if the company wants to get rid of the cars overall, which we see as a trend too, that the mobility budget, which we're discussing for 10 years, I would say, is now finally more attractive, because now with all the reduced mileage on the perk cars, at least, we will see more individuals doing their stuff themselves. And that would drive a bit the private demand again. But I think we will have lots of short-term cycle cars with Auto Abos the next 2-3 years, because people are testing, trying, not knowing, short of supply, so they will rise.
Okay, I think a lot of people in the audience will say, yeah, I will take that, because of course a lot are having challenging times in sourcing, so they would basically love to see that coming. Marc, thanks a lot for your time.
Yeah,
And
been a pleasure.
of course, people know how to find you if they've got even more questions. Thanks a lot.